All right, just like that, we're going to get started. One more time for the folks in the back. Are there any empty seats left? Raise your hand if you have an empty seat next to you. Folks, if you're looking for a seat, come on up. There's plenty of seats up here in the front. Unless you're looking to make that early exit, which I get. I saw me too.
I can't stand by the camera because it's going to be
all right.
Over there is fun.
Well, we'll get right into this. My name is Blankenburg. I work at Dynatrace. We have some booths here. If you haven't visited them, please do. But I'm not here to talk about Dynatrace today. I'm here to talk about vibe coding. And it turns out if you write an interesting title, people will show up to see what you have to say. And so thank you all for being here. So the title of this talk is not vibe coding if you know what you're doing. I will be the first to tell you I don't know what I'm doing. But I've been a software developer for 25 years. I spent a lot of time thinking about and architecting systems, databases, all of that. But vibe coding is new to everyone. And I'm amazed every time I have a good conversation with someone about using AI to write code for you. Often they're like, yeah, I've tried that, it's awesome. And then when you sit down and show them, they've clearly not done any of it. They get the concept, right? And I'm hoping a lot of you are here getting the concept. You've heard about vibe coding as a practice. And like many of you, I hope all of you showed up kind of with this face, like, what is he really going to teach me here, right? We're talking about getting AI to generate code for me. The code's probably terrible, it doesn't work well, it's insecure, all of those things. I'm hoping that I can show you that if you do this the right way, and if you do pay enough attention to what the AI is doing for you, that it can be better. And so the biggest thing I think that's hurting a lot of this is the hype. There's so much hype around the idea that all of us as software developers are going to lose our jobs tomorrow. And all of this is going to be done for us. I can't really picture a world where there aren't people that need to kind of keep the guardrails on, that need to know what the systems actually do and how they work. And that's what all of us are here to do. And I will tell you, based on all the hype and all the things I've heard, I have that same face. Like, I really don't necessarily believe in how all of this is going to work out. I've joked with some people at our booth already today that there's going to be an epidemic 5 or 7 years from now where all of us are going to have to come back in and fix all of the apps that some senior executive decided to write on its own, right? So hopefully that isn't where we end up. So let me give you a little baseline just as we get into all of this. What is vibe coding? What are we really talking about? So for me, this is using AI to generate almost 100% of all of the code that my application runs. Now there are exceptions to this, right? I built a database, I've done some other things, but it has added tables to it. It's added stored procedures to my database, so we have things that it can do. But sometimes I have to help it over the rails or get the database set up and then it can do the rest. But for me, it feels a lot like working with a junior developer that has just infinite patience and also infinite skill when necessary. And so you as the vibe coder, if you will, and I really hate that term entirely, you remain the architect, the reviewer, the QA, the tester. You still need to go through the same processes we go through with all other good software development. So the way that I got started, like everybody else, I was like, oh, this ChatGPT stuff sounds really cool. Let me give this a try and see what happens. And so I cracked open ChatGPT and I was like, build me a mobile app. This is what I want it to do. And it was like, whoa, let's start. Like, what file are you working on? I was like, I haven't done anything. I haven't started building a mobile app at all. Okay, well, why don't you go do this first, and then we'll talk about what you want to do to build this thing. And it kept pushing it back to me and saying, well, you go do these things first, and then I can help you write a function, or I can help you write something simple. And it gave me a lot of snippets, or parts of a page, or a piece of what I needed to do, and I felt like my first experience with vibe coding was really copying and pasting out of one window and putting it in another one. And while that seemed neat, like, oh, cool, I didn't have to write that function, it also became, well, this doesn't seem like I'm moving that much faster. I could have just done this myself. Why am I waiting for this AI system to produce a bunch of code that I could have just written if I was really kind of cranking along? And so debugging was a nightmare. There was a lot of challenges that I really had here. And again, this is my evolution over time. People may have different experiences with these tools as they go. But I thought, man, I need something that's built right into my IDE. And I heard about Cursor. So I thought, okay, cool, I'll give Cursor a run. And Cursor was great. I could give it the context of a file or a few files, and then it could go off and run. But I still felt like, man, it's really limited to like the scope and the scale of what I pivot, and it limits itself to just those things. And so I still felt like it was better than trying to push a nail into 2 boards with my bare hands. I felt like now I had a real hammer. But what I wanted was robots building a house for me, right? Like I wanted it to do most, if not all of the work, and I just kind of wanted to review and observe what it was doing. So I tried again, right? I jumped into GitHub Copilot. And I had kind of the same experience I had with Cursor. It was kind of the same feel. And I really couldn't find a good way to like accelerate the way that I was building code. I heard about people that were moving 100 times faster than they ever had before. And so then I stumbled into a friend of mine that was working on some software he was building. And in this case, he was using Claude. I hadn't used Claude yet. It was just next on my stop of the AI tour. And he was showing me some of the ways that he was using Claude to do this, right? It was baked right into his CLI. And as I was watching him work, because we were just screen sharing, my head exploded. I couldn't even believe what I was seeing. He would type a sentence of 15 words, and all of a sudden he had a feature. And I just didn't understand how this was even possible. And what he explained to me basically was, well, I have a bunch of documents that I've written with a bunch of requirements about what I needed to do and how I wanted to do all that. I said, man, that seems like you're still spending a lot of time like writing the plan and doing all this. He goes, no, I had Claude write these before I started. And I said, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense. You have a plan, you have your features, you have all this stuff that's working, and then you say, hey, go execute the plan that we came up with. And so I remember just thinking, this is what I was hoping for. This is what I was looking for. And that kind of lit the light bulb up for me. I all of a sudden understood exactly how this was all going to work. And it came down to the idea of planning. I had been just kind of scattershot, like, hey, let's add a feature, let's do this thing. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of lean into that vibe coding idea, is that like, I don't have a plan, I'm just gonna go in and make some stuff happen, it'll be neat. But when I saw him, he had this like finely executed plan. I want to do these things, I have these features, here's some descriptions of how those things are gonna work. And he wrote none of those, but he prompted all of those things to come into existence. And so I realized as I was kind of writing this talk that maybe the title of this talk should have been, it's not vibe coding, it's only vibe coding if you don't have a plan. Really going into this and having a plan is good. And so I started thinking about what my plan would look like, because the app I'm going to show you guys is something I've been thinking about for about 5 years. So let me show you my plan. Wrong plan. This is the real plan. My plan to build a website for card collectors. And so for any of you that may have been at one point or are today in the hobby of collecting sports cards or Pokemon or whatever it is, I have found that there are very few tools out there for people that actually collect cards. If you're interested in a website that lets you see how much your collection's worth or your investment or whatever they call it these days, there's lots and lots of those. But if you're looking for something that just keeps track of what you have, what you need, and what you want as part of your collection, really isn't a whole lot out there. And so during COVID, my wife very wisely said, hey, you have all your childhood card collection in the basement. What are we doing with those? And I said, great question. I can't go anywhere or do anything. I'm going to go through all of those. And so I started digging through my collection. And I thought, man, I'm a software developer. I need to categorize and catalog these in some way. So I started wherever a good developer does, in Google Sheets or Excel. And I started tracking all this, and I realized really quickly that I was getting nothing relational out of this. Every time I had to rewrite a player's name or a team name, it drove me crazy. And so I thought, no, there's got to be a better way. And so I found an awesome tool. I can't say enough good things about it. Has anybody used Airtable? Love it. I thought it was awesome. It was scratching that relational database itch for me, and I thought, I'll chase after this and use it. Until I hit their limit of 50,000 records. And I thought, oh man, I'm trying to build a database of all the cards and then build myself a system that lets me select the cards that are in my collection. And so 50,000 isn't that big in the grand scheme of things. My estimate for the number of sports cards that have ever been created, closer to 500 million. And so, and I don't mean duplicates. I mean, those are unique cards that exist out there. So this is a big database that I'm thinking about. It did let me know, though, by the way, that the actual limit is 90,000 on Airtable. They'll let you slide until you get to 90 before they ask you for more money. So a good thing to know. So I said, okay, I've got to get serious about this. Let's dig in deep. Set up a SQL Server on Azure and start it rolling. Let's build a good schema. Let's really think through what this data all looks like. But I still didn't want to sit down and write the entire interface for this entire application. So I found another tool called Retool. Anybody use that? Retool was fantastic. I could build up interfaces really quickly. I could build stored procedures in my database. All of this stuff could connect together really nicely. It was fantastic, especially for things when I had a list of players on the left, and I wanted to see a list of the teams they were assigned to, as well as all of the cards that existed for that player. It was so easy to set all of these things up. But as I did this, I found that Retool didn't also have a lot of the features that I wanted. I wanted to be able to have multiple users, open this up to the world, and be able to potentially charge them for the service. Retool didn't really make any of that easy. It's meant for primarily internal tools in your own company. And so eventually I gave up and I said, okay, AI, let's make this happen. And so I decided vibe coding was the way, right? I had been using the wrong tool for the job over and over and over. This picture doesn't do it well, but that's a screw and a hammer. I wouldn't recommend it. But that's kind of the thing that I had been stuck in as I was doing all this. So let me give you guys a quick picture of what I've been building. We'll start with a quick demo here. So I'm going to jump out of this and bring a browser over to this window. Something like that. This is the system. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I do want to show you a couple of features. The first is, if I type in something like Cleveland, without even hitting enter, I'm going to get a list of all of the entities that exist in my database, categorized by the type of entity it is, whether it's a player, or a team, or a set, or a player name, or whatever it happens to be. And if I dig a little deeper, let's do something like Johnson, as a pitcher for a couple of teams named Randy Johnson. As I bring this up though, you're going to see a bunch of different players that show up, and I can see how many cards they have and what teams they played for. All this stuff is coming right out. So if I tap on him, you can see that I now have a list of every card that's ever been made for Randy Johnson that I put in the database. That's a bigger project for another time. But you can see I can filter this stuff down, right? I have all of these team circles. So if I only want to see his Arizona cards, I can tap that and boom, my list filters. Over here I have things for autographs and for relics, where they put pieces of baseball bats or uniforms in the cards. I can filter those things down and find just those specifics. All of this is all coming out of that same database. On top of that, I have a bunch of other cool stuff I did. I have the ability to have a personal profile page where this keeps track of all of the achievements that I've accomplished. There are thousands of them. So as I go through that, I can see all of my achievements. I also have my favorite cards, so I want to share this profile with other people. These are the cards in my collection I'm most proud of. I have lists of cards that I can show with people, so I am regretfully saddled with being a Cleveland sports fan through and through. And so as a result of that, that means I'm a fan of the Cleveland Browns. And I thought a cool collection to put together a few years ago would be anyone that has ever started a game at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. This is becoming a sizable collection as we continue on here. But it also keeps track of any place that I've added social commentary throughout the site, right? So it shows what things I'm interested in, what things I'm talking about. One of the things I'm the most proud of is out here at the end. I built a data ingestion, maybe it's this one, a data ingestion tool. And so if I have this like 2018 Topps Chrome, I wanted an easy way to add a checklist to the system, right? So if I come over here to this monitor for a moment, I have a spreadsheet. And I'm going to just copy some data and go back over here. And I'm just going to paste it in here. This is copying out of Excel, maybe, and into this text box. And I'm going to hit, let's process that. What it does, because I want to make sure all this data is correct, is I wanted to go through and I wanted to find every single player, see anybody that's green here, those are ones that's already recognized and matched in my database. So now I know the unique identifiers for every one of those players. I don't know why because there's trademark names on these team names, that's why it's ruining that. With more time I could go and clean that and fix it. It knows what all the rookie cards are. It knows if there were any comments or notes on that card. But every one of these green boxes with a player name, you can see that it knows, like, hey, you got the right guy. In this case, it looks like I have a couple Freddie Freemans, but I know this is the one that I actually want, so I'm going to click on that, and boom, he's green now, and so I've got that all set, and it's locked in on that specific ID. I go through this list, I can do a quick review. This is a messier one than normal, and then I can ingest all of that data into my database, and I have the 2018 Topps Chrome data in my database. It's so much easier than having to hand enter this, which is where I started. And being able to build a bunch of other complicated Excel spreadsheets that are doing a bunch of logic to try to match all of the IDs in my database. So this is kind of the general idea of what this site does. It's meant to track and manage my entire collection, keep track of what I have and what I don't have, and make it easy to find things that I'm looking for. So let's jump back to our presentation and talk a little bit more about how this really works. So the first thing that I want to say is that if you haven't gone down this vibe coding journey, I want to warn you, this is as close to dopamine as I've ever gotten. The idea that I can give it a short sentence or a couple of sentences, and all of a sudden I have a feature that works, makes you want to just sit there and keep going. My wife's like, hey, it's 11:30, you coming to bed? I just need like 20 more minutes. 2 a.m. rolls around and I finally come up to bed, right? It's one more thing. I've got so many ideas and things that I want to put through this. It has made me love writing software again. It's not that I ever hated it, but sometimes it felt like a grind, like, oh, I gotta work on that thing today. Now, this is some of the most enjoyment I get in working in my software. I also, this quote came from a friend of mine, unrelated, but it just happened to show up a couple days ago. AI is legit helping me find love for building again. And I really believe that. I find that there is so much that I used to just get caught up in the syntax or how something was working or battling some kind of API call or whatever it was, and now I don't have to do that. I will tell you, one of the features that's half built into my site at this point is that you can link your eBay account to the account on my website. And if you buy something on eBay, I automatically recognize it, catalog it, and add it to one of your lists that is in transit so that you can keep track of the cards you purchased. Think about all the work that goes into that. That was done in 30 minutes. And I don't know anything about the eBay APIs, right? I didn't have to learn them. I didn't have to get apart. I didn't have to find an SDK. It was great. So the thing I want to share with all of you as we kind of cruise through the rest of this presentation are my do's and don'ts. These are things that I have learned through my journey as I've gone through building this gigantic website. It is available, by the way, if any of you are collectors. It's collectyourcards.com. If you guys want to try it out or check it or do whatever, or just send me a message and be like, hey, I wrote this page. That's also great. I'd love to know. So let's start with the do's. I think the do's are the positive side of things. And some of these are things that I discovered or learned along the way or had Twitter conversations with people. So some of these you may be like, yeah, of course, Jeff. But for some of us, they may be new information because it was to me once. So the first one is, there's a file called Claude Markdown. If you guys aren't aware, it's, at least with Claude, this exists in almost every AI system at this point. If you aren't aware that this file exists, you'll be so mad when you find out that it does. This is the context that is passed to the LLM every single time you send anything. So when I say, hey, build this little feature, it also gets the contents of my Claude.md file. Inside my Claude.md file, I now have all sorts of awesome instructions. There are so many things in here about rules I want to follow. The instinct Claude has to use a JavaScript alert box to do something real for a user drives me mad. I don't ever want to see a JavaScript alert box on my website, ever. And I made that a rule. That's somewhere in here. One of these items is never ever use JavaScript alert boxes. But at the very bottom, I'm going to read this verbatim because I think it's amazing. It wrote this document, obviously, as I was telling you what I liked and what I didn't like. It says, if you forget these principles, you will frustrate this user immensely. Read this section at the start of every second. This is it trying to stop me from getting mad. Because there are times where I'm like, no, I've told you 100 times that's not how I want to do this, right? And so it starts to realize, like, oh, I should be adding this stuff to my context so that I remember how these pieces are working. Here's a second page of it that has things like, what is my database password? The local development database password. We'll talk much more about that. What are the URLs that we use? What port are we using as we run our development server? One of the things that I also found here was that for whatever reason, I had a password that I created for my development database, and every time it tried to connect to the database, it would just guess the password was password 123. Not the password I was using, but that's what it thought it was or thought it should be. And after about the 40th time of it trying that and failing and saying, well, I guess I can't connect to the database, I just went and changed the password to password 123, and now it works perfect. So for my dev database, I'm totally okay with that. It's living just on this machine, but I would obviously never do that for production. And we'll get into that in our don'ts. One of the other things that I always recommend is, as you're thinking about building anything that a user is going to have a user interface for, is think about creating a design guide. This doesn't seem intuitive at all, but let me see if I can show you what I mean here. I think that's my second tab. I can get my mouse right here. No, this one. So I had to create a design guide. I wanted to know what every element that I would ever put on a page might look like. What are the colors we're using? What are the icons we're using? What does a table of data look like? I have tables on tables on tables on this website. And I want to make sure that they're clean and easy to read and they resize nicely. So what I did instead of building the whole site up front was I said, okay, let's talk about what a card table looks like, or let's talk about what our spacing looks like, right? You saw those team circles? I have an example down here somewhere. Yeah, these are the 4 sizes you're allowed to use. Don't make up another size. Don't come up with your own font sizes or anything else. Let's use one of those sizes. Let's think about what the headers on pages should look like. and where these pieces should go. So when we have a player to tail page, I designed the header here. We worked on this as a design project. And then when we were done, when I was building the player to tail page, I said, I just want the header from the design guide. And it knew what I meant, right? I'll just go grab that and I'll implement it here and we'll be on our way. But it goes much beyond just page headers and simple colors and what buttons look like. As I dig deeper here, you're gonna see that I have what do the individual cards that represent all of my entities look like. They all have different kinds of data that need to be shown in potentially different ways. On top of that, we also have things like what do modals look like. I have lots and lots of pop-up modals. So these are all tests of what would happen, what the screen looks like when I launch a modal to have somebody enter some data. It's super useful, and then you can later reference back to this all the time and say, no, I want a modal like the edit card modal. These look exactly the same. That goes a long way. I think down here at the bottom, I also have my tables, right? So we can see what a table of data looks like. Make sure that everything lines up and lays out properly. This is a different kind of table showing cards you already have in your collection. And as we get down here at the very bottom, I want a library of all of my icons. I want to know what the icons we're using for all of these things. So if I look at something and say, no, that's not the one I want to use, and we can just talk about the image icon, how we want it to be something different. We don't have to have it go search the entire website because it's only ever going to use this as its reference. So we have the one place. It knows how to render things and make things look good. Okay, that's a little bit about the design guide, but I can't recommend that enough. It's a good first step in building any application, whether that's web or mobile. And I didn't show you the design, the demo, but that's where we were headed. Another thing that I think is wildly important, it's going to be like, yeah, of course, Jeff, this is important, but you'd be surprised how often you won't do it. Source control is vital here. As you're building locally on your machine, you're going to say, hey, I want to do this feature. And it's going to go, okay, cool. Well, I have an ORM that maps to the database, and I noticed that there's some inconsistencies. You must have added a field to the database, or maybe I did something wrong with the ORM. I'm just going to use the ORM as my guide, and I just blew the database away. I hope that's okay. And you're like, you did what? There were 700,000 records in that database. Please don't ever do that again. Okay, I won't ever do that again. Let's fix this problem. Hey, I just blew the database away. Wow. So my recommendation always is think small and iteratively. Think about what you're doing, and as small a chunk as you can, commit it. You don't always have to throw things up to GitHub, or GitHub happens to be my place. But think about how you can commit small iterative chunks, because it will go do a big thing. And then you say, I don't like that at all, let's roll it back. If you don't have a commit or some wall to come back to, it doesn't remember what it did. It doesn't remember all the things that it changed. And so now you're at the mercy of asking it, hey, can you please take all the changes you made out? And that only works about 80% of the time. You don't want to have to dig through that. Okay, so be very conscious about committing your code. When you feel like something is good or in a working state, commit it, move on, try the next thing. Document all the things. You guys have probably heard saying that you should write and document your code like the next person to work on it is a raving psychopath. Yeah, I can't recommend that enough. And really the reason I say this is because you need to know what the code does, so have it documented for you. It needs to know what the code does and what the system overall does. So when I complete a feature, I actually have a Claude archive markdown file that says, okay, I did this thing, I'm gonna put it in the Claude archive. And so now I have a working document that shows all the features we've ever completed in detail. It's long. But what's really nice about this is that if I really start over, I have a list of every single thing we've ever done. It's really awesome. Okay, I mentioned iterative earlier, but we're going to do it again because it's important. Be iterative. It's tempting not only to bite off big chunks and say, hey, I want to do this huge feature, but it's also very tempting to write long paragraphs of instructions. Here's three long paragraphs about what I want to build. I can guarantee you it's going to do 60% of it and say, I'm done, and it's going to be wrong. And you'll go in and you'll start testing something and you'll be like, that doesn't seem right. Why is it returning that data? And you realize that it did kind of do it, but instead it mocked it all out. And none of it actually works. It just mocked it. So it pretends like it's working. And if you don't have a sharp eye, you may not even notice that it's not working because it used data that looks exactly like the real data. So I tend to focus on like, what is that one or two step thing that I want to do? As I'm looking on a page and I notice that a form field's all wonky, I'll say, okay, we're going to focus on this right now. I need the name and the last name fields to be left aligned. I need the labels to be right aligned. We should have that nice column at the center. It's like, oh yeah, of course, I always do that. I'm like, well, you did it this time. And so it's a nice, easy way to keep it small and keep it moving in the right direction. Another thing that I'll mention is that if you guys aren't thinking about observability in your software, whether that is it's your stuff at work or stuff that you're coding for AI, this is going to become more and more important to you. We think of observability as logs and tracing and all that kind of stuff, and being able to see what's going on inside our applications. Think about running real applications that you didn't write the code for, that you didn't create all of the logic for. This becomes an even more important story. And so I mentioned I work with Dynatrace. I'm legally obligated to show that slide at least once. So that is the end of my preaching about observability, but I do think it's important to think about. As you are building software that an AI is writing, how else are you going to know really what's happening under the covers without reading every single line? And as much as I will encourage you all to read every single line, you won't. You're not gonna, because it works. And of course it works. I also recommend lots and lots of testing, as much as you can. I know as developers always say, yeah, of course I'm gonna write tests later. We don't always do what we say we should do. And so I think testing becomes even more important here because you can use that as your requirements. I'm gonna write a test. Now I need you to go write the code that satisfies that test, right? Okay, let's get into don'ts. So these are hard-learned lessons, every single one of them. First one, never ever give AI access to production. I mentioned my story about databases being blown away. I thought that I had a nice firewall between production and development until I realized that it knew where my Git repository was because it's in my development environment. And it thought, oh, I'll just commit this code for you, perfect. Shout it out, CI/CD fires up, and boom, the code it just wrote is in production. And I thought, well, that was a misstep. I didn't mean to have that happen. And so that was a good thing for me to kind of learn, right? I mentioned that my databases have been destroyed. Thankfully, it's only been in development. But there's lots and lots of opportunities to really ruin things. So as tempting as it ever may be, I'll give you a good example. Hey, you just made that awesome new feature in development, and you added 3 new database tables and a bunch of fields. Can you add those to production also? Don't do it. Don't do it. It's not worth the risk. The better request is, hey, can you write me a script that will recreate all of that in production? You can read through the script, make sure there's no drop tables, there's no delete feature or whatever. And then, okay, go ahead. You can run the script that it wrote for you in production. Another one I'll mention is don't skip documentation. I mentioned this at the beginning. You always need to have a plan. You've got to have a plan for how this is going to work and what it's going to do. Because without a plan, it's just going to kind of make it up for you. And I think it's better to come up with a set of bullets and a set of ideas about what you really want this thing to do before you jump any deeper. The next one, AI forgets, teammates inherit. Most of the time, I'm a unique case, at least for the application that I'm building, where I am a solo developer. But more often than not, we're working on a team of people. And those people also have to use and interact with your code in many cases. The AI is not going to remember what it did yesterday. In fact, I'll talk about this if we have time at the end here a little bit. It doesn't remember from session to session what it did. So when you say, hey, remember the thing we were working on? It goes, no, what were we doing? Okay, cool, we were working on this table. Okay, cool, I'm going to use the keywords I found there. I'm going to search through your whole code base, try to find something that resembles that, and say, okay, is this what you meant? It really doesn't have any real context about what's going on. And you don't want to load that context, that Claude Markdown file. You don't want to load that full of everything you've ever done, because that is tokens that you're using every single time that you shoot stuff across the web. So the less you can do that, the better. Okay, another good one you should all know. Don't assume correctness. This is a great example of exactly what I mean. You should review every line of code. You should make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. You should verify database inputs and outputs. I also recommend, if you can, Claude has a nice feature where you can create secondary agents that you can give prompts to that say, hey, I want you to be a security engineer. Hey, I want you to be a DBA. I want you to think about all the problems that these kinds of people face, and I want you to review my code base. You can do that, and I think that's a recommended practice. But I also like bringing in other agents. Bring in Cursor, bring in ChatGPT, and have them look at your stuff from a different angle. Each of those models is trained slightly differently on different code bases. And so it's useful to have somebody else outside of the same LLM look at your stuff and really get a feel. I have been blown away by the number of times that I've asked it for, do I have something simple like, are there any security flaws in my application? Where are the opportunities for someone to do some SQL injection, as an example? And it came back and it's like, oh, these 4 places. And I was like, those were in my rules, man. No SQL injection. It's like, I'm sorry, I'll fix it right now, sir. Like, it's amazing. But you have to really rein in your attitude on this because it is very easy to be verbally abusive to AI when it's not doing what you want. But think about architectural problems, potential bottlenecks, there's all sorts of things that are really done quite well. The other one is, it's not done for you, it's done with you. You are the owner and operator of this ship. It might be steering for you. You guys have all heard stories about airlines, right? Pilots most of the time are letting a robot fly the plane, except usually during landing and takeoff. But they're still there with their hands hovering over the wheel, just in case. Or taking it, I don't actually know. But it's important to remember that you're the one driving. You're the one that's responsible for what this is creating, especially in a work environment where you have other obligations to other people. I can do whatever I want in an app that I'm building. But when you have to work with other people and this potentially manages revenue for your business, you want to be very conscious of exactly what's happening. Don't ignore performance. It is very easy, again, on my development machine, where I don't have to even hit the network. It's great to be able to say my database is so fast, my app runs so great, until I throw it in production on a very slow server with a slow database, and realize just how laggy it is. And I make one call, and all of a sudden I'm getting all these connection overloads and all sorts of other things in my app. And so I started digging in, and I said, why is it that I'm getting all these connection timeout errors in production specifically? And it said, well, because you're creating a new database connection on every query. And I said, I am? I don't think I wrote it. You are. Let's figure that out. He goes, oh yeah, I should have been using pooling connections all the whole time. And so it figured it out. It rewrote the entire connection layer of my application. And now we use one connection string every single time, which is how it should be. And it's nice to be able to make those calls into the database and pull the data in and out that I want. But there was one point where I had 88 connections to the database. That's too many. Okay, so I only have a few minutes left, like 10 minutes. I wanted to try and implement a feature live in front of all of you. That seems terrifying, but we'll give it a run. So let's jump into a quick demo before we wrap up. So there's a few other tools that I wanted to show you while I'm doing this. Let's see if I can bring these up. Oh, there it is. Okay. So let's get out of the presentation. Working off these two screens is not the easiest. Stop. Okay. So I had that, and then I had this other one over here. So these two terminals are pretty interesting, and we'll jump to them in a second. So this is my ID, right? I've got all these files. I've got all sorts of folders and things that are my project structure. All these ones, especially the ones you see in capital letters, these are all, for the most part, either SQL scripts that wrote for me or plans for things that we want to do later. But what I wanted to do, I have, if you recall from the website, I have these user profiles, right? So I can come in, you could come in to my website, and you can find my profile. And maybe you'd like to be like, hey, I like this, I'm going to follow what they're doing, or I want to have a friend relationship or whatever it is. I have not prepared the system at all for what I'm about to ask it to do, so we'll see what we're really out of this. But I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to say, hey, on the user profile page, I would like the ability to follow a specific user from that page. This is probably a friend symbol of some kind of button, but I'm open to your suggestions. We will need to preserve these relationships in the database, and I'd like to model them the same way that LinkedIn does, where reciprocal, I can't see that, follows equal friendship. Okay, that's all I've written. So let's see what we get. So it's going to go out. It's going to try to figure out like what in the world are you talking about? What file are you talking about? So it's thinking right now here. I can blow the spot up to get it back. Thought for a whole 9 seconds. It's thinking about the database schema now. So we have a user follow table that it's going to create for me. You can see it's already writing a database migration script. That's doing it specifically because that's in my cloud thing. If you're ever making a change to the database, I want a script so that I can go put that in production. It's thinking a little bit. Here we go. So we've got the script. You see it only gives me like the header of it, but it's building out that entire document. Then it's going to go ahead and try to read the file. Of course, you can't read it because I haven't saved it yet. Now we're documenting the database changes and looking at files that we need to potentially think about. Eventually, it's going to start searching for something like user profile or something like that. Again, I didn't give it any clues as to what file I wanted to change. I just said the user profile page. But with all the routing I have going on in React, like it's going to have to look at the routing and then figure out what does that mean for a specific file. You can go a little faster. There we go. So it says, hey, I wrote this. I wrote this script. What is this? Oh, is this the database? Yeah, so it's going to go to again, it only has access to that database, but it's asking me, hey, I wrote this script to do all this. Do you want me to do it? Yeah, go do it. And again, it probably forgot how to connect to the database, which is normal. So it's figuring these pieces out as we go. Now, what's fun about this? Normally, I sit at home. I've got 3 monitors at home, and so while I'm doing this, I'm also looking at this page, just waiting. I just want to see what's it going to change in the UI. When does that button pop up? It'll get there eventually. Do I want to proceed? Let's try that again. Still an error. Maybe I should be doing it in the database. Okay, so it created the tables for me. Yeah, let's keep going. So now it's got to build API routes to be able to talk to the database. So it's going to go think about what are the routes that I need, how do I mark what a follow is, how do I indicate what are the parameters I can pass to that API. I need the user that is doing the choice. I need the user ID of the person that they're trying to follow. So it's figuring all that stuff out. This may have been a more aggressive demo than I should have chosen. I thought this was kind of interesting to see a bunch of different layers all be affected. Cool, so we're going into the server routing. It's reading that file because again, it doesn't remember that it wrote that file yesterday.
That will change.
I'm sure eventually we'll get much better contextual stuff. It's amazing to me how often it has to remind itself. Okay, now let's work on the front end. We find the profile page, so now it's just searching through my directory to find something that's called profile. It's adding a file button. Let's see if we got a file button here. We can wait, because that's what it's going to do. Hopefully we'll see something maybe by my name. I don't know where we would choose to put this file, but it could be at the bottom. It's just refreshed, that's a good sign. Not down there. What are we doing here? Now let me add the follow button to the UI. Next to the edit profile button. So up near my name is a blue button that says edit profile. I think that's where it thinks it's going to put it. Which I guess makes sense. Come on, just give me the button. Now I joke, like I could have done this, but in this much time I would have gotten the button on the page, right? I still would have to write all the API logic myself to do the database schema. Did you fail? No. Oh, CSS, cool. And we hit the blocker I was worried about is compacting my conversation. So I have used up all of the context that I would have available to me based on the subscription I have to Anthropic's Claude. This usually doesn't take more than about 2 minutes, but I don't want to just stand here and watch a compacted conversation for 2 minutes, especially because we're almost out of time. So what I will do with this time instead is bring my mouse back to this monitor and bring this up. And yeah, we have 5 minutes left. So I'll try to jump back if I can. But with that, I will say thank you. This has been an awesome kind of opportunity to share all this with you. And if any of you would like to get a hold of me or ask questions after this, you can grab this QR code. And I'm literally everywhere as at Jeff Blankenburg. But if you scan that QR code, it's links to all of my different social